So in previous videos, we've come to an understanding about why flashbacks and nightmares occur. We've seen that these are unprocessed memories, and that we have a reminder of these memories without a time tag, and so they feel like they're happening all over again. So we have this problem. We have this rogue memory, this very different memory that's pulling us back to the past with a huge amount of force, with the animal brain activating and alerting the fight and flight response. What do we do about it? Well, when being pulled really forcefully back to the past, to do something about it, we place ourselves and remind ourselves as strongly as possible that we are in fact in the present. These are what's known as grounding exercise, and they can be used for a wide variety of different things, such as panic, which happens in trauma, definitely flashbacks, definitely nightmares, definitely unreal or otherworldly experiences like hallucinations or high levels of anxiety. If we consider this in relationship to the model that we've seen, the Ehlers and Clark model, in effect this drives a wedge between the memory part and those feelings, that hypervigilance we later experience, it coming back very vividly in flashbacks and nightmares. And there are two main ways of doing this. We can use our senses, and we can also use what's called cognitive or thought-based grounding. With sensory-based grounding, we're using the things that we can see, hear, taste, touch and smell to place ourselves in the present. The example I always use is, it's very difficult to be anywhere else if you've sunk your teeth into a lemon. That sharp citrusy taste and smell has a way of putting us right in the here and now. Equally, it's very difficult to be anywhere else if we're next to the loudspeakers at a rock concert. Equally so, if our taste is becoming activated, we might want to carry some strong sweets around with us, or some strong mints or something like that. And this is how broad grounding exercises can be. They can be literally anything. Anything which places us in the here and now, provocatively enough to pull us back from the past memory that we're experiencing. So what's really often helpful for sufferers of flashbacks and nightmares is to consider what senses activate when they're in one of those states, and actually pair what grounding tools we use with the senses that activate. So actually, if we have images of the memory, it might be really helpful to carry around something which is really quite visually provocative, like a brightly coloured postcard or a brightly coloured piece of fabric, for example. So some people get concerned with grounding exercises, that these are rather unusual things to do. And I contextualise this in PTSD being a normal response to abnormal circumstances. I'd also ask you to consider, the example I always come up with here is Nadal. And if you watch the way he serves, which is well commented on, he'll go through all kinds of movements and gestures before he serves. And this is a bit like grounding. It's got ritualistic elements to it. He goes through a series and a sequence of movements that clearly feel he has to do, but it also settles him. In effect, he grounds himself before he then serves. This is something that lots of sports people, and indeed lots of people in their everyday lives, go about to make them feel settled. In PTSD, when we've got a really strong memory coming back, we have to do this all the more strongly to place ourselves in the here and now and survive that reminder that we've experienced. Now, I've referred to nightmares here as well, and that might seem strange because it leads to the question of, how can I ground myself when I'm asleep? Well, what's significant about trauma nightmares is they wake us up from our sleep, and that's the time in which we ground. What's usually significant is that people sleep in the dark, and for sufferers of PTSD, it's sometimes the case that actually they might need to use low-level lighting, which won't disrupt our sleep, but where actually we can see the environment around us and ground to it. Because very frequently the disorientation is such, people will believe themselves to be somewhere else. Now, that's not always possible for partners, for reasons other. And in those circumstances, we have to use what we've got in order to ground ourselves. So, potentially an object underneath a pillow or on the bedside table, which we can touch or smell to know that we must be in the here and now, and we're not in the memory or in the nightmare that's just woken us up. Ultimately, sleep is a state of low agitation, and we will want to get back into slumber, and so therefore our grounding exercises coming out of a nightmare will probably be a bit more gentle than those ones during the day. It isn't going to be as alarming as sinking our teeth into lemon. Maybe it might be something that's delicately textured that we touch under the pillow. Or where we've got a pleasant smell, a pleasant neutral smell. Lavender is often used, that we actually smell and bring ourselves back through those gentle means to make it easier to fall asleep again when we choose to. This also brings to mind for me that grounding doesn't happen instantly, and generally speaking, the more the trauma or the worse the trauma or the more immersive the flashback or the nightmare, the longer it will take to come out of it. For most people I've met, 10 to 15 minutes is generally long enough for them to come back into the room and come back into the present tense quite satisfactorily enough. For other people, sometimes an entire therapeutic hour can be taught simply teaching the discipline of being able to come back in the room. And how much you will have to do might depend on the circumstances that have gotten you to this point. The bare fact of the matter is that grounding, placing ourselves in the present, does work and can protect us against those horrible memories coming back in this fashion without the time tag, as we've explained. The other major means of grounding is cognitive grounding, and this uses our intellectual capacities, our cortex, to be able to consider time, and through doing so place us in the here and now. So, the kinds of questions I would run through when doing cognitive grounding are these. What's the date today? What time is it? Where are we now? Who am I? How many kids do you have? What are the age of their children? Where do you live now? How long have you lived there for? And these are all ways and means to show that timescales have passed and the here and now can't possibly be in past memories. Generally, if things have happened a long time ago, things have moved on. We may have children. Children will be of older than the memory itself. And by these means, we exploit that it cannot be happening in the here and now. I'm sure there must be those who are thinking, this is a good idea, but this is difficult to apply because a flashback or indeed a nightmare is so immersive, it's very difficult to remember to do those things. So when applying, it's important to have prompts and cues there, which mean we're reminded automatically. And in order to do this, we will have some sense of what our triggers might be. In our own environments, we can add things or alter things so that we have those reminders there. For example, if we know that we will get reminded at the top of the stairs and have a flashback, we can have grounding prompts on the steps up to that point in the stairs where we get activated. So we might carry something that will remind us that we're in the here and now, past that point. If we find that the armchair is a particularly difficult place, and it's there we think on things, and generally we just fall into a flashback or a dissociative type state, then indeed we might have something on the mantelpiece, something brightly coloured, which will remind us and which will be there to mean that we actually don't fall in, we remain in the present tense. These are examples of sensory grounds, things that we can see, things that we can hear, things that we can touch, things that we can smell. But we can also do this with cognitive grounding as well. And we do this with reminders of things which are in the here and now. So a news channel left on will have contemporaneous information, current information in a constant stream. It's worth noting that most people I talk to don't like watching the news, and it can be activating and triggering for them. So we would find other ways in those circumstances. Maybe a modern music channel, so that we know the music that was playing wasn't of the time of the trauma. This might have its difficulties in itself though. Newspapers, sports sections, if we don't actually want to read the current news, can act as prompts and grounds in these circumstances. One of the great things about a newspaper as well is that it's portable. We can make reference to it and see the date, see the current affairs of the day in a moment's notice. And indeed, prompts to carry around can be part of sensory grounding too. Often with clients, I recommend that they have a pocket of a jacket that they use frequently, or a bag or a small box that they carry around with them, which contains their prompts to grounding. So something bright to look at, or something attractive to look at, something to smell, maybe their earphones to put into their phone with which they can listen to a radio station or some music that grounds them in the here and now. These are ways of being able to bring ourselves back. And indeed, we can do this discreetly. If we have something in our pocket, we can constantly touch to remind ourselves during a difficult conversation or during something which would usually stress us out or trigger us. Hopefully these make sense and you can think about how you can apply them to be able to bring yourselves back from an intrusive memory, flashback or nightmare. I really hope today that the video has been helpful. Please like and subscribe to Beacon Psychology Service to find out about more in the future. Thank you.